So, have you ever thought, wow, a lot of disabled people are also kind of gay? Well, you're not wrong. Hello, lovely people. I recently made a TikTok short reel, delete as appropriate, about the high incidence of people who are both LGBTQ+ and disabled, and it seems to have struck a nerve. That wasn't what I meant. Yes, in fact, not only do studies from both the American Public Health Association and the Movement Advancement Project find that the prevalence of disability is indeed higher in the LGBTQ+ community, it's 1 in 3 of us. Most recent national census data here in the UK also agrees, with a higher percentage of disabled people in England identifying as LGB+, gay or lesbian, bisexual or other sexual orientation, at 6.4% compared to other disabled people, 2.6%. Interestingly, lesbian, gay and bisexual adults with disabilities are significantly younger than heterosexual adults with disabilities. Although you can watch my video on why are so many young people LGBTQ+ to find out why that might be the case. Click the card in the top left of the screen to see that video. I will also leave it in the description below. So, disability is of course an intersectional identity. You can be disabled in many other things. Hilarious, Hispanic, Hindu, Hungarian, horse rider, for example. Just as you can be LGBTQ+ and any other type of person, including actively homophobic. We know from research and census data that people with marginalised identities are more likely to experience health challenges, including or resulting in disabilities, which partly because discrimination takes a toll on our well-being. Oh yes, you heard me right. Could initial discrimination be the reason for that high illness figure? Well, we'll get to that. But also, kind of maybe. When I first started making YouTube videos and had to explain to people in the real world what my channel was about, disability and chronic illness, but also LGBTQ+ issues, why do you look so confused? The main response was that it seemed to be an incredibly small niche. Yet, something, obviously a personal anecdote here, but firstly, I'm almost at 1 million subscribers. Subscribe if you haven't already. And secondly, that crossover, it's huge. The incidence of disability or chronic illness, and yes, I'm including various mental health issues because mental health is health, in any LGBTQ+ group of friends I come across is generally much higher than the figures to me suggest. And I realise that I am the thing. I'm obviously going to come across people who are also the thing, but I could only think of one queer friend group I know who don't have health issues. And then I realised they're all deaf. Now, in my case, I felt way more comfortable being open about my sexuality because I already had health challenges that I had to just confront constantly and explain to people non-stop because they aren't always visible. Oh, you're having an ice skating birthday party? Wow, that sounds amazing. I would love to come. I can't actually ice skate though, not because I've never tried, it's because it's my connective tissue, it's sort of like slime. My ankles are just pathologically incapable of holding me up and I will slop to the ground like a bag of bones. I am a lesbian though, so if you have space for a sassy gay best friend, I'm right here. Oh, not that kind of gay best friend? Never mind. In comparison though, liking girls is just this fun extra tidbit that I can share with people. It was so positive in comparison to, really? You want me to list what's wrong with me? And can I just ask, doctors of the room, when you are taught to make your patient recite what is wrong with them, even though it's literally written on the piece of paper in front of you, is it intended to be with the sensitivity that for those who have chronic health conditions or lifelong disabilities, you're potentially bringing up a lot of trauma? Because I don't love it. Who would? There are too many things. I've got a quarter of them, and then I have to keep randomly adding them on later. Just read the front page of the note. I know you're trying to save time, but I promise just reading the bullet points will be faster than this. So, here we have one possibility. I already have something that makes me obviously very different, so I might as well explore the other things, right? But there is also the fact that LGBTQ+ people who don't have a disability may acquire one due to the direct discrimination against them, whether that be physical, emotional, or even a more systemic issue like lack of access to appropriate housing. Such as a trans woman who wasn't offered a bed in a women's shelter, sleeping outside and developing chronic recurrent bronchitis. But this can start from an early age, with LGBTQ+ students and those who are believed to be such being much more likely to experience bullying or harassment at school because of an actual or perceived disability, with 26% having reported it to a teacher. Now, of course, those are the ones who would tell their teacher that they're being bullied for being both LGBTQ+ and disabled. And the percentage figure is taken from teenagers who accessed services for queer teens, whereas not everyone does. I remember being at one of the schools I went to, and some friends of mine were chased home by school bullies who were shouting homophobic slurs and shooting BB guns at them. And that was down a main road with plenty of witnesses. And even though they still had BB pellets lodged in their flesh, they never told a teacher or parent, because what were they going to do? Was what we thought as stupid teenagers. But I am the adult now, and I am telling you that some adults do care, and they will move heaven and earth for you. And you can make a difference by telling someone in charge what is happening. Don't let a bully pressure you into staying silent. If you tell one adult and it doesn't help, even if it makes the situation seem worse in the short run, you just keep trying and you keep telling until you find the one that says enough and puts a stop to it. Lots of adults have their own stories of how when they were a child, an adult didn't help them. So they're trying to do better now. And hey, if that's you right now and you need help and you need to reach out, we are out there. I absolutely could throw some more sad statistics at you here, but let's take a break for our special intermission. Famously disabled rainbows. So there are actually lots of famous people who are both LGBTQ+ and have disabilities, and they aren't all white men, even though that is the most commonly represented demographic when you type disabled person into Google Images. I mean, no offense to my white dudes, you do make out some of my favorite people. It's just that you're not all of my favourite people, you know? So let's hear it for a better mix of disability representation too. Blind, deaf, non-visible disability, learning delays, developmental disorders, mental health conditions and everything else. How many famous disabled and LGBTQ+ people can you list? Here are some of my faves. Absolute queen Rosie Jones, who is a comedian and author with cerebral palsy and a wicked sense of humour. British national treasure Stephen Fry, who's done great work talking openly about having bipolar disorder. Model Aaron Rose Phillip, who has appeared on the runway for couture designers like Moschino, as well as in campaigns for household names like H&M, Dove and ASOS. Of course, Frida Kahlo, the brilliant artist who had polio and spinal and pelvis damage. Chellerman, obviously. Deaf model, painter, sculptor, performer and intensely interesting human. Lord Byron, yes, the poet. He was born with a deformity of his right foot, which affected him all his life. Actress, model, and incredibly attractive human being, Gillian Mercado, who has muscular dystrophy. Leonardo da Vinci, yeah, I know, painter, scientist, sculptor, and architect, who wrote in mirror writing, had kind of erratic spelling, and had a mind unlike any other. Potentially neurodivergence, potentially dyslexia, potentially epilepsy. Lady Francesca, fabulous drag queen and member of Drag Syndrome, a group of drag queens with Down syndrome. And I feel like I just said drag too many times. The intermission is over. Now, I could hit you with some fun facts to pull out at parties when faced with people who don't believe in identity politics and don't see colour. Well, there is an overrepresentation of both LGBTQ+ people and people with disabilities in the juvenile and criminal justice systems, a fact which only increases for people who fall into both categories, as well as people of colour. Please do explain your thesis on why, Donna, without mentioning race, sexuality, gender and disability. We're all listening. Trigger warning that Donna probably doesn't approve of. So, a recent report from Stonewall found that 20% of LGBTQ+ disabled people have faced discrimination in healthcare, and a shocking 59% said that it was not worth living at some point, in comparison to 31% of LGBTQ+ people who are not disabled. So, you know how I previously talked about, oh, you're out and proud and about one part of your identity, you're just bound to be more open to exploring other parts. Well, that isn't necessarily the case. I mean, we can't ignore that there is a reason that the most common answer to being trans is a choice is, honey, why would I choose this? Honey is not always the term. As much as we do and should love who we are, we have to acknowledge that prejudice and social pressure from the outside world is real and is strong. I personally don't have any negativity tied to my gayness as it exists independently within me, but I do hate that I have to watch myself before saying wife in front of someone new, or explaining that when my toddler loudly says, "Where's mummy?" I'm not his nanny or his aunt, I'm just his mama. Apparently that's a different subsection of parent in his mind, and you cannot challenge it. There are mummies, there are daddies, and there are mamas. Some children have one, some have two, and some have all three, and some just have their adult. And the reason I do that is because I'm scared of what that person's reaction will be, because I don't know. There is an intrinsic feeling of being unsafe. And that is bizarre when what I am talking about is literally just the makeup of my family, but yet I have to somehow check that you as a human being seem like the type of person who won't attack me, whether that's verbally or maybe physically. And I've only a few times had someone start going on a bit of a funny one in front of my child, and luckily when he's been young enough that he hasn't been able to pick up on it. But I don't love the intense outpouring of stereotypically not great stuff. Whilst I absolutely would not, and obviously cannot, change being gay, if you'd asked me before my son was born, I definitely would have said that I wouldn't choose it. Now I know that this amazing little human wouldn't exist otherwise, so yeah, I'm clicking that gay button every time. And whilst on the one hand we can muse about, oh well, perhaps a person with disabilities has less social pressures placed on them to fit into a compact society due to part of the stigma against them that people who are disabled are not interested in sex, intimacy or relationships, which is absolutely something I felt as a very desexed, bedridden, incredibly ill teenager, like, no one cares who you fancy, sweetie, we're just wondering if you'll make it to Christmas. At the same time, there is a very heavy burden placed upon us by having carers who are often family members who may have trouble seeing us as mature and interested in sex and relationships. Equally, the expectations we feel from those caregivers who might have their own very loud thoughts on the gays could lead to internalized homophobia or a fear of coming out and expressing something that might lead to an end in care and a reduction in our quality of life. What a fun video. Spoiler, not everyone feels safe and secure enough to out themselves. Plus, discrimination within minority groups is just as big a problem as it is outside. 100% of disabled people aren't magically never homophobic or transphobic just because they have disabilities. And LGBTQ plus people certainly can be not the most inclusive when it comes to accessibility and different needs. But of those who are able to self-identify as belonging to both the LGBTQ plus and disabled community, the number is certainly rising. Recent statistics show a higher correlation. So again, why the crossover? Well, point 2. When people don't have equal rights or feel unacceptable in society, it is no surprise that it directly impacts their health. Discrimination and rejection are traumas. Some studies have even proposed that the traumatic effect of discrimination and rejection on LGBTQ plus people's mental health and physical health can itself be considered a disability. Further research done by UCLA showed that trans people are significantly more likely to report having a disability due to a physical, mental or emotional condition, as a knock-on effect of increased isolation and stigmatization. So are we all just getting along? You know what sucks? When it's your friend's big birthday, she's been hyping you up all week in the group chat. You spent 3 hours getting ready. You've had a great time at pre-drinks, and then you arrive at the new gay club to find it's down an alleyway that can only be accessed by some stairs. Oh yeah, and you're on crutches. Brilliant. So even though their website said the club was accessible, they didn't bother to factor in the steep steps outside for some reason. Curse those people to eternally bad Google reviews. Spaces and services focused on the LGBTQ plus community are not always the most accessible. And conversely, spaces for people with disabilities might not recognise the unique views and experiences of an LGBTQ plus person. This kind of gives a sense of invisibility within both communities. Pride Month is a great example of this, right? Organisers of events don't necessarily always recognise or prioritise accessibility by failing to provide accessible routes, adequate wheelchair spectator space, accessible toilets, and other necessary requirements. The intent of Pride is that it is for everyone to proudly celebrate their body, gender, sexuality, and physical appearances. So it's kind of a disappointment, to say the least, when the needs of everyone to include people with disabilities, are just not taken into account. Many LGBTQ+ spaces revolve around nightlife and alcohol, which excludes not only those in recovery or those who cannot drink, like myself, bring on the Diet Coke, but also anyone who finds club and bar experiences overwhelming. Dark spaces, bright flashing lights, very loud music, people crushed together, an emphasis on sexual connections and physical touch. This is one thing that definitely varies based on your location though. Where I live, gay capital of the UK, there are queer knitting clubs, walking groups, rainbow family meetups, movie nights, library events, and dog beauty pageants. I didn't even have to make that last one up. The one thing that can be still a little inaccessible is in-person activism, which might rely on marches or loud crowds to prove a point, both things I personally try to avoid. There's also the feeling that to be heavily involved may require a lot of energy or time, something we with chronic illnesses and disabilities are often short on. But if we can job share, we can activism share. Even an hour or so makes a difference, and there is a lot that can actually be done from a keyboard, whatever people say. Disability Pride Month, first created in Boston in 1990, the same year as the Americans with Disabilities Act was established, is celebrated in July of each year, but didn't come to the UK until 2015, compared to Pride, which has been well established here since its inception in 1972. But recent years have definitely seen increased awareness and a wider attention to people with disabilities, especially within the LGBTQ+ community, with more spaces opening to accommodate everyone. Queer House Party is a community platform and LGBTQ+ party that now hosts online live streaming events with captions and audio description, and a local space here in Brighton called The Query ran for queer people, by queer people, advertises as a wheelchair accessible sober space. And at this year's Pride they had a fun fair, yay. Very fun. The more the LGBTQ+ community can support those of us with disabilities, the more we can drive policy advances and create positive change, whilst also increasing the understanding of the unique challenges LGBTQ+ people with disabilities experience. Stigma sucks. What a point. Whatever the reason you're facing it. But in some ways, it's also a great opportunity, right? To look to other stigmatized communities and to connect with what they are going through. And that lived experience can definitely make us more aware of the members of our community who are intersection of identities facing more than one battle against prejudice. As president of Respectability, Jennifer Laszlo-Mizrahi says, "It is vital to fight stigmas and advance opportunities so all people who have faced prejudice can achieve a better future." Thank you so much for watching this video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Remember to subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in my next video. Bye bye.